Welcome, everybody, to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast. I'm Pete Wright, and that right there is Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, Pete Wright.
How you feeling?
Hello.
You feeling good?
Feeling great,
Why,
yes.
why is that? Why are you feeling so good?
It's ADHD Awareness Month.
Yay! Yay, go ADHD. I am aware of you.
It's time to
Every
bring awareness.
stinking day, I'm aware of you.
I know, right? Yeah.
Raise your head every day off that pillow, ADHD. Come sit
time for another day.
Sit on my stinking shoulder.
Well, that is not a good way to start this podcast, right?
I take that back. I take that. I should not say it that way because ADHD offers us, as we know, some fantastic superhero abilities. What exactly do we look to get out of ADHD Awareness Month?
Okay, well, this is going to be a good podcast because we're going to talk about a lot of things. And when I was writing out some notes, I wrote my first sentence was, my intention for this show is to bring some attention to ADHD. And I thought that was kind of funny.
I like it. I like that. It's like a little alliterative kind of play.
Intention is to bring attention to ADHD, which, so that's my point. But I thought that was kind of funny. Do you think
I think it's delightful.
It's delightful. So that's my point. But there are actually some categories here that I'm going to talk about. First is I'm hoping to share some facts and just some general knowledge about ADHD. So anybody who's out there that's listening, maybe they found something out today that they didn't know before, and they can pass that knowledge along and share it with other people too. So we really do want to bring awareness to this ADHD thing. So that's what I'm hoping for that.
Excellent.
Also want to talk about some different resources for people to go to because I think that's important. And I want to talk about my new website being one of those resources. I'm very excited about that. And then I also want to talk a little bit about what it takes to make coaching successful. That was a question that was asked to me about a month ago, and I thought it was a really great question and something that we could cover today.
I love it.
So, Pete Wright.
Yes, Nikki. Hi.
I am going to have a lot of information to spew. So if you have anything you want to add, please feel free to interrupt me. I will not be offended.
To interrupt the spew?
Yes. And I may
My goodness, I wish you hadn't used that word.
Spew?
That's like the grossest word you could use for imparting information upon people.
Well, what's a different word?
Spew? Doesn't spew like it's like
it means,
that's
really.
like it's like akin to ooze. Or,
I have a lot of great information. It's a positive thing.
It is. Yes, you're
fluffy
oozing
cotton candy. That's what I want to think of. Not
okay.
like throw up.
That's what I was trying. I didn't want to go there, but you opened the door. Okay, please let us begin.
How I envisioned this.
This is why people show up, I'm sure. Tell us where would you like to start? Go ahead. I will not interrupt yet.
Well, no, you can though, because I'm probably going to need to drink a water here at some point.
All right.
Or whatever's in that cup. I don't know. Anyway, okay. On track. What is ADHD? That's what I'm going to talk about first. Is just some few facts around ADHD, and the definition that I'm going to use is actually from the book "You Mean I'm Not Lazy, Stupid, or Crazy?" ? I found their definition to be very simple and easy to read, and that's why I chose that one. What they say is it is a disorder of the central nervous system characterized by disturbances in the areas of attention, impulsiveness, and hyperactivity. Any surprise there?
Well, not yet.
Okay. Now, you may have also heard this term called executive functioning, which I know, Pete, you actually know a lot about.
One of my very favorites.
Yes, and Ari Tuckman writes a lot about these executive functions in his book, More Attention, Less Deficit. And he also has this really fantastic workbook, which is also a great resource for folks, that's called Understand Your Brain, Get More Done. And what he goes on to explain what these executive functions are is that in ADHD, it's more than just focus and hyperactivity, but it's also how ADHD processes information. And that's these set of skills that are these executive functions. And so they basically are categorized into 4 different sections: planning, organization, working memory, and self-regulation. So these are just a brief overview of what these 4 things are, just to help you maybe understand a little bit more about ADHD and what these executive functions mean to ADHD. Planning is that sort of breaking projects down. It's very difficult sometimes for somebody with ADHD to look far into the future. They tend to just see what's happening now. They can be more black and white thinkers. Decision making can become an issue. And so all of these kinds of things can potentially affect how you plan, right? So that's a set skill that is holding that could be holding you back.
Oh, absolutely.
Organization is not going to come to any surprise that is a skill set that ADHD can find difficult. And it is certainly one of the reasons why I got into ADHD coaching is, as a professional organizer, I saw this so often that the majority of my clients did have ADHD. They want to be organized, but it's just a struggle for them. And sometimes it's because they may make their systems too difficult. They forget, the homes that they actually assigned for certain things. It can be hard to make decisions of what's important, what to let go of, what to keep. And all of these type of things are going to make organization difficult. Then we've got this working memory thing, which is this short-term memory. And one of the best examples I can give on this is if you're being told to get something from the grocery store and you have 4 items, but you come back with 2 of them and probably a whole lot of other stuff, but you don't come back with the 4 items that were asked of you. It's not intentional. It's just that you somehow internally or externally got distracted and you forgot what all 4 items were. And so that's...
I like to think I'm on top of things. I'm a student of ADHD.
Yes.
This happened to me last night.
It did?
Yes. I was sent to the grocery store for eggs, and I came back with hard apple cider. Take that for what? There's a message in there somewhere. I'm going to let you all figure out what that is.
Working memory is a challenge.
It was a rough,
right,
it was a rough day.
It might be for you too, but you're not alone. Eat is having the same issue.
Yes.
So, yeah. And then this 4th category that he has under executive functions is self-regulation, which is that impulsiveness. We a lot of times you forget to pause, and it's really easy to become reactive in a situation. And those are the times where later on you kind of think, oh man, I wish I hadn't said that, or gosh, what was I thinking? Well, you weren't. You were being impulsive, and that's that self-regulation thing. So there is a lot we can talk about here. But again, my intention is not to bring it's just to bring attention to these things. But these resources that we have mentioned they are going to be in the show notes. And so you can definitely take a look at his book, and also the first book that I talked about. You mean I'm not crazy, or no, you mean I'm not lazy, stupid, or crazy. All 3 are really great resources.
Can I?
Okay.
Let me ask you. I have a question.
Please.
Do you ever find working with people, and I'm this is a leading question because I've felt this before, that you start to study this condition that you have, right? You're struggling with ADHD, so you start reading about it, and suddenly you just get overwhelmed, and it can be an enormously depressing feeling. Is there such a thing as too much overwhelm, or am I unique in that?
Oh no, area? I don't think you're unique at all.
And I find myself getting mad. I just get so mad
because so much of what you're probably looking at or Googling or researching, it really shows more of the negative aspects of ADHD and doesn't really shine the light of the positives or the strengths. And so that's where I think it can be a slippery slope of, wow, this sucks. This is really depressing. Like I don't have a way out of this, and so I think that's probably where people might fall into that. So absolutely, I think you can probably get too much information.
Do you ever offer, what kind of advice do you offer people? Like how do you help people focus on just what's right, what's important?
Well, I think it's important to have an awareness of how your ADHD affects you. There's no doubt about that. So I think that there needs to be some conversation around these executive functions, and there needs to be a conversation between me and my client, for example, of how organization affects them, how these planning things affect them, and then sort of work from there as far as giving them the guidance and the support and those strategies and tools that we talk about, so that they don't feel like it's hopeless, right?
Totally.
I mean, they have choices and they have things that they can do. Now, it doesn't always mean that it's going to be an easy road, or that they don't, they're going to have to put some effort into it. And we'll talk a little bit about that later.
Yeah.
But I think that, the important thing is to know this affects you. It is how your brain works, but there's an incredible amount of power to knowing that as well. And that's what I would want to carry over, is that now you know this. So what are we going to do about it?
Yeah. All right.
Make sense?
Well, it does make sense. Yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely.
So one of the questions that I do get, again, this is about awareness, is what's the difference between ADD and ADHD? And the official medical term is ADHD, regardless if you have that H or not. Typically, they'll diagnose you with ADHD. So to make things simple on my website and when I blog and when we talk, even in our podcast, I think for the most part, we just kind of say ADHD. We don't say ADD or ADHD.
Right.
It kind of confuses things, but the main difference there is that hyperactivity component, and so to the degree that you have that. So if you have you're fidgeting a lot and you're real restless, then that H is going to probably fit into that ADHD for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more common for boys to have the H part than girls, and it's also the reason why girls and women so easily get misdiagnosed or don't get diagnosed with ADHD, is because they don't have the fidgeting and the hyperactivity, but the internal distractions are still very real for these women and these girls,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly can get in their way. And so it's important to kind of see that. So that's just kind of throwing some awareness out there for people.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, so moving on. What if you think you have ADHD, but you don't know for sure? And I see this a lot when I tell people what I do for a living. So I'll be, in the car, or not the car line, but I'll be like, in my school waiting to pick up my daughter, and somebody will ask me what I do, and I tell them what I do, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I have that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I need
right.
you. I need to talk to you." Well, anybody can have issues, and when we probably all have issues to some degree with organization, procrastination, things like that. But it doesn't mean that you have ADHD, right? But if you feel like you might, like you really feel like you might, because some of these things that I've talked about earlier are really getting in the way of you having a high quality of life, then that's when you need to go and talk to a professional and get a professional opinion. And you can go through all kinds of different testings and things like that, so that people, you can see if this is a true diagnosis for you or not. And this is where I'm going to get a little serious.
Oh.
And I don't mean it to be a downer.
Okay.
I want to put that back up front, just because I think that, again, that information is power. But it does become a very serious matter if you have ADHD, but you have not been diagnosed. And the reason for that is there's stats out there that say that only 15% of adults have been formally diagnosed and treated, which means there are 85% of people out there that have ADHD, and they don't know it. They're undiagnosed, they're untreated. And if you look into further stats of what happens with folks with ADHD, especially if it's untreated, they're going to be more likely to have employment issues, like getting fired, quitting impulsively because they get mad at their boss, more likely to job hop. And these things could be happening, but they don't know why. They're more likely to earn less money. They're twice as likely to separate or divorce. So if you think about, the stats are already 50-50, and, for anybody without ADHD, and now you've even doubled that on top of it if you have ADHD.
Yeesh.
And more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. So it's serious. I mean, it really is serious. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was at a CHAD conference, and there were people that were sharing their different experiences through their support group. And one of the facilitators said that there was an older woman who was in the corner of the room, and she was crying. So at the end of the meeting, he went over there to ask her if she was okay. And she just kind of looked at him and said, "I just wish I would have known. My life would have been so different." And I mean,
that's exhausting. That's just...
It is. And that's why I want to bring this up. It's not, these statistics are not to bring you down. The information that you find on the website, like what you had asked earlier, it's not to depress you or to make you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm doomed. It's not that at all. It's to let you know that the information is actually very empowering. And the more that you know about how your brain works, the more power you have to ensure that you can still live the life that you want to live and that you have choices. There are resources out there for you.
When you run into folks, particularly because your work focuses on adults, and so when you run into folks who have not been formally diagnosed, what are some of the reasons that they haven't gone to just talk to somebody about it or kind of ask those questions? I recognize that if they've gone down the road of like drug and alcoholism, obviously there are other things that have supplanted what may be one of the root issues of their ADHD. But what in your experience is why people haven't gone in to talk to somebody?
I can only assume what that answer is. I couldn't tell you for sure. I have had a few clients that I've worked with that have not had the official diagnosis of ADHD, but they think they have it. And I've encouraged them to go and talk to their doctors because there's more to treatment of ADHD than just coaching. And that's where you want to, do they need therapy? Do they need medication? What's really going on? Is it really ADHD or is it something else? You can't just assume that it's ADHD. And that's, I guess, my biggest message is that if you really are concerned, you do need to go talk to a professional who can really, truly diagnose you. I'm going to take a guess that there's probably some fear there. I mean, it's just, why do people never go to, there are some people that just never go to the doctor because maybe they're fearing what they're going to hear. What if it's not ADHD and something a lot worse?
Yeah, right.
And if you don't know a lot about ADHD, there's still a lot of fear of what that is and what that means. And so that would be my guess, but I couldn't honestly tell you for sure. This is the reason.
I think there's another one I've run into, and I only experienced it because this was part of my learning was that it's a thing that kids get and they grow out of it,
right?
And that's an assumption that I think carries some weight. And boy, when you discover that's not true, that's really eye opening.
Well, and so many of my clients didn't get diagnosed until they were later in their years.
Hallelujah. Yeah,
40, 50s even sometimes. And a lot of times it's because the child got diagnosed first. And then they're like, oh, that's a little too familiar.
That describes my family.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And you're not alone.
Yeah.
I've seen that time and time again, and now it's a family issue.
Yeah.
And something else too that's important to recognize is if it is a family issue for your family, that ADHD affects everybody differently. So just because it may affect one child one way doesn't mean that's the same exact way it's going to affect the parent. It can come out in different ways. And so, yes, there's these common characteristics, but everybody has their own story to it. So that's important. And there are lots of resources, and that's something that, I want people to be encouraged. CHAD is one of my favorite resources for families and for kids who have ADD. They've got great support groups. They have great classes that you can take. The conference is wonderful and very friendly to parents and children. And ADA is also a really great organization for ADD, and they've got lots of webinars that you can listen to and take right on their website, and they're free, and there's just lots of education. And then there's an Attitude Magazine, which is one of my favorite resources. In fact, Attitude Magazine is definitely an inspiration for me when I'm looking for podcast subjects to talk about. A lot of times we'll go to Attitude Magazine and see what they're talking about.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so the newest resource that I want to talk about that I'm very proud of is my new website. And I have to shout out to you, Pete Wright, because you have done a lot of hard work to make this website happen. And it's out and it's available for people to look at. The new URL, you are not going to find me at Take Control Organizing. I guess you.
Yeah, you will, but yeah, you can.
But it will go into takecontroladhd.com.
Yes.
Correct? Right?
Yes, that's right.
That works. So new website is takecontroladhd.com. There's a new look. Hopefully you'll like it. Hopefully you'll find that the site is easy, user friendly, easy to read and get around. A lot of things are going to stay the same on this website as before. I mean, I hope that you continue to find the podcast to be a resource for you. Blog posts that are posted there. My coaching services, my ebooks is still available, taking control of your space. And coming soon is the paper solution, which we will talk more about when it's closer to launching. But
close.
That is around the corner. And I have some other projects that I'm going to be working on to be resources for folks with ADHD that's outside of just coaching. And so look for those in the next year. So definitely I invite you to look at the website and put that in your bookmark as one of your resources.
Excellent.
I feel like I need to take
it's a little bit of a marathon.
I know. I'm like trying to get all this information in.
I know, right? But I think the last thing we want to talk about is just because so much of what the new website represents is this kind of ongoing evolution of your work with people with ADHD, and that sort of manifests differently. You're not directly working with organizing clients anymore, and so your work, your coaching is taking on kind of a new flavor. And so what does that look like these days?
Well, definitely focusing on ADHD, which means not just organizing, but all of those executive functions that we talked about, all of those things I coach around with my clients. And one of the things that I kind of want to talk about a little bit, which I just thought was such a fantastic question. It was asked to me about a month ago of what makes coaching successful. And I think it's important that if you're interested in coaching, that you understand this. Because really, if these things don't happen, then it's not likely that coaching is going to be successful. And that's just, being honest. I don't,
right.
You got to have some of these things going on for you. One of them is you have to be ready to be coached. And what that means is you have to have a healthy state of mind. I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach. And there's definitely a difference between being in a deep depression versus just really feeling frustrated and overwhelmed by your ADHD. And so I'm very upfront when I talk to people in that first phone information that if I think at all that therapy might be a better course of action for you, then I will definitely let you know that. You have to be, ready to be coached, which means you're open to the process and wherever that may lead you. And that takes commitment. And I think, if I was to highlight anything, what is it going to take for coaching to be successful? You have to be committed, which means showing up on your weekly sessions, being as prepared as you can be for those sessions, being willing to really be challenged with some powerful questions from me, digging deeper into things that you probably haven't dug into, very closely. And so it's really being open to that process. Once we've explored, some of these things, then it's time to take action. And that's really where success happens too, is that you have to be willing to do the work. There's that expression of if you do the same thing over and over again, you're going to keep getting the same results. And so if you're going to go to coaching, if you're going to make that investment, then you have to be willing to try some new things, be open to some new strategies and some tactics. Don't be afraid to fail because, not everything works, but that's okay because we just keep going. I mean, we just keep trying to figure out what is going to work for you, and being open to those possibilities. And then I would say the last kind of key component of successful coaching is just being patient with yourself. Many of you have lived with these challenges your whole life, and so you can't expect them just to be gone overnight. We're building new habits. We're shifting ways that that we think about ourselves and our self-talk and all of these different things, all these executive functions, all this stuff takes time. And, so oftentimes I'll tell people, be patient, be kind to yourself. What you're doing here really matters. And it does deserve the time and attention that you're putting towards it. And it doesn't matter how long it takes for you, because it's worth it. You're worth it. And that's why coaching can be such a key component to managing ADHD.
Well, and the success of your clients speaks to that. We're constantly hearing from folks just what, the importance that coaching plays in their lives. And this, it's a very powerful relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
You ready to breathe?
I think so. I knew this was going to be a long one, but I'll tell you, I'm very passionate about this. Obviously, I wouldn't build a business around it if I wasn't. And it's important. This awareness is important. So I hope people enjoyed the show and maybe learned something new today.
Well, I do too. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And, as ever, if you find that there are some things that connect with you about this show or Nikki's work, or you'd like to share, please share your comments either on Facebook or Twitter or Google+. It's all Take Control ADHD. At Google+, we have an official page now at Plus Take Control ADHD Coaching.
Say that 10 times.
I know. Google is... don't even get me started on the Google.
This whole switch has been difficult.
It's been a challenge.
And Facebook is still sort of in limbo right now.
It is in limbo. Well, we'll see. Hopefully by the time people listen to this, it will have been resolved. So, anyhow, so there are some things. But you can always find all of our various social platforms from the website at takecontroladhd.com. And we encourage you to visit there, look around, and see if there's some new resources there that you might like to partake in. So thanks for being a connection. Thanks for your kind comments, kind words. Find us on and subscribe for free in iTunes. You can just search for Take Control ADHD and you'll find us. And you can subscribe and leave some stars if you have some laying around. We appreciate it. Thanks so much, everybody. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright. We'll catch you next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.